Hey guys, it's Bailey. Welcome back to the channel and thanks so much for tuning in to what is going to be a review of another set from Real Techniques. They've launched a few limited edition sets relatively recently, maybe for the holidays or maybe just for fun. But I recently did a video about a 12-piece collection that they recently launched, a really cool collection if you want to go check out that whole review. But I also picked up what's called the Ruler of the Skies Buff Blend and Spotlight collection. It's a 4-piece collection with a sponge, a blender sponge that's in a sphere shape, and then 3 brushes in here. And I thought I'd just run through what's inside, what I think of them, and then actually compare them to some of the other brushes in that other set, just to give you an idea of if you're looking for a Real Techniques set, or if you've seen those that they've launched recently, maybe which ones to get or skip depending on your brush preferences. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first I want to start with what intrigued me most about this set, which was the sponge ball thing we have going on here. Basically, it is a blender sponge, but in the shape of a sphere, as opposed to the teardrop of a beauty blender or the shape of their sponge, which is not in here, but this is roughly the shape of their sponge, just a teeny little bit smaller. So they have come out, oh, here it is, for size reference. Here's the typical Real Techniques sponge, and here is the sphere that they came out with in this collection. And they also actually have a sponge duo that I bought as well. I didn't realize that the ball sponge came in the set that I'm talking about today. So I bought this duo, and I'm kind of glad I did, because even though, spoiler alert, I actually don't like this ball sponge, it was interesting to note there is quite a size discrepancy. Even though there's nothing on these packages that indicate they're 2 different sizes sponges, there is a size difference between the ones you get in here versus the one that comes in this set. So just something to understand if you do want to try the ball sponge, there is a size difference depending on the set you get. So like I said, not crazy about this because it lacks those tapered edges that both the Beauty Blender and the Real Techniques sponge have. It's harder to get into those more precise areas like the inner corner area when blending concealer, around the sides of my nose, and on my upper lip, on my temples. You know, it's just easier to get in these more narrow spots and really buff and blend my foundation in when I have something that's a little bit more tapered and tailored to those specific areas. And I also just feel like it's hard to get a broad side of this thing, like compared to the surface area. If you really want to go in on like this broad side, you can blend a lot faster because you're just covering more ground. Same with the Beauty Blender, and it's just so much harder, I think, to get a nice solid kind of flat surface here to really go to town. It's just a little bit slower to blend in my makeup. Then there is the 308 blend brush, and the package describes this as a brush with densely packed dome head to blend creams and powders. So given the size, I'll just show you a size comparison here as it sits next to the buffing brush. This is from that set that I mentioned earlier, but it's almost identical to the original buffing brush from the permanent Real Techniques collection. So just to give you a size preference, you can see it is a smaller head and much more densely packed than the buffing brush. So I have tried using this for foundation, but because it's so much smaller, it's a little bit slower going than this larger, fluffier foundation brush. Not impossible, but just a little bit slower and not any more precision than I need in my foundation routine. It says it's good for creams or powders, and given the size, it's a pretty good size for like a cream contour or a cream bronzer. Not so sure I would use it for powder just because this picks up a lot of powder product at a time, but really good for buffing and blending in precision cream products like a contour or a bronzer or even a highlighter, something like that. But because I don't tend to wear a cream highlighter or cream products across my face, except for maybe in the summer months, I don't see myself getting a ton of use out of this kind of brush, especially when I have something and prefer the buffing brush when it comes to foundation. There is the 300 powder brush, and this is described as an arched cut that lightly sweeps on powders. I have used this for loose setting powder, my Laura Mercier translucent loose setting powder Glow. It's good for applying that, and it's a pretty loosely packed brush. So here it is again, just for the sake of comparison. This is the blush brush with a more tapered tip, good for getting in with a bronzer or a bronzer if that's what you're into, as well as blush. And then there is the ultimate powder brush that was included in that set that I referenced earlier. And here is that 300 brush in this kit by comparison. So you can see it is a good bit fluffier. It's a little bit pinched in here on the side, which is good. I've used this not only, like I said, for that setting powder, but I also today used it to apply my bronzer and my blush as well. So it picks up a good amount of product, not too much. It's not so dense, kind of like I sometimes run into with this blush brush. That tapered head is really great for getting a more precise application in the cheek area with the powdered bronzer. Bronzer? That was weird. Bronzer or a blush, but when it comes to blush, it can just be a little too densely packed. It's easy to overdo it with this brush. It's not bad, just it can be easy to overdo it, whereas I haven't run into that with this 300 brush. So overall, a good brush and probably my favorite from this set. Then the last brush in this set is kind of an interesting one. This is the 309 Eye Perfecting Brush. It's described as having a pointed cut design to apply liquid glitters. I have used this to apply cream product. Today I used it to apply this new Almay Velvet Foil Cream Shadow that I'm testing out. You can expect a review of that coming soon in the shade Ruby Glam for reference. It's the only thing I'm wearing on my eyes today. But then you can also use it to apply like a base and then a glitter over top. Like, it really is a good shape anyway for applying products to the eye area. However, what I ran into, especially when applying this cream shadow today, is that it's just a little big for the eye area. And I do have quite a bit of surface area on my eyelids, so I think someone with smaller eyelids or less surface area across their lids might run into feeling like this is a little bit too big and cumbersome to work products in there. And just for the sake of comparison, here is the 309 as compared to the blending crease brush from that set I mentioned earlier. I mean, just take a look at that size. The crease brush is obviously quite a bit fluffier, whereas the 309 is more densely packed. Again, that's in part why it's good for placing that glitter across the eye. It's not going to get stuck. You don't want to buff and blend glitter in. You really just want to pat and pack it across the lid. So that is good for that. But I would have preferred, I think, a brush closer to the size of this crease brush rather than this domed guy right here. And in fact, if I were to apply glitter, I would, and wanted to stick to a Real Techniques brush, I would probably go with this one, the shading brush that they have, which is quite a bit smaller by comparison, has a flat edge, still a little bit fluffier in case you want to use it as your one and done shade. In fact, I use these with the cream shadows from Sydney Grace. That's what's on this guy right now. So it's good for packing that pigment on the lid and then buffing out through the crease, but this is one that I could see using for glitter over something like this 309, just for the sake of having something a little bit more smaller and easier to handle in my eye area. So those are all the tools that come in the Ruler of the Sky set. And overall, I have to say, I mean, you could probably tell this by the way I'm describing and comparing these brushes, but for the most part, the brushes that came in this set and the sponge that came in this set just aren't for me and the way that I like to apply my makeup on a daily basis. And that could be totally different for you, but just in comparing them to the tools that I have from the Permanent Real Techniques collection, and even those that I talked about in the more recent video that I did of that limited edition set, I just find myself getting a ton more good out of those tools and products because of whether it's the density or the size, the shape of the brushes. These just don't match how I apply my makeup on a regular basis. So it's not for me, and if after everything you saw here today you make the same conclusion, I recommend you go check out that 12-piece set that I talked about earlier. I'll link the video up here in the description bar below. But also because this Ruler of the Sky set is $29.99, whereas that 12-piece collection is $49.99. So for just 20 bucks more, you get 3 times the number of tools in the collection. And like I said, I just personally think that I would use those more frequently. But as always, I'd love to hear what you guys think about all this stuff. Have you tried any of these sets, this one in particular, or any of the others that I've mentioned previously? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure you check that other video out if you're curious about that other set as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye guys!